You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Our guest today is Petalyn Albert. Like so many of our guests on The Authenticity Show, Petalyn is kind of amazing. She's a certified divorce coach and a certified hypnosis therapist. And beyond that, she's just really fun to talk to. We were glad that she came down from her home in Northern California to hang out with us. In this first segment, she talks about her idea of a heart-fueled giant, which is fascinating. She also discusses her work as a divorce coach and grief counselor, and there's a cool conversation about creativity and flow states. So yeah, good times.
Good evening, Satch Purcell.
Good evening, Carlos Casados.
My dear friend. You know what? I'm so glad that you're here tonight because I've had a couple of solo missions for the Authenticity Show, and I miss not having you there.
Yeah, I know. Solo missions are good from time to time, but you know they say distance makes the heart grow fonder.
That's true.
So here we are.
I miss your presence. I'm glad we're doing this together.
Yeah.
Because there's a very special person who came tonight, who's special in many different ways. She's a friend of mine, dear to me, dear to my heart. She's a soul sister on a parallel path to awesomeness and inspiring people. I'm really glad that she agreed to come down from her castle in Northern California, the Bay Area, to come be with us. Welcome, Petalyn.
Hi, Carlos and Satch. I am so happy to be here. Honored to be here. Thank you.
You know, I knew this was going to be awesome the second I saw her shirt. That is a super cool, interesting skull psychedelic shirt.
It's amazing.
Right?
Piqued my interest.
Yeah, New Orleans. I was just there.
Nolo.
Yeah, Nolo, absolutely. My second time there, and I really enjoyed it.
Very
Was
nice.
it a fun trip?
It was a
more
fun
of a work trip or both?
No, not at all. I was there to celebrate a dear friend's 50th birthday with her.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so we did
I
the
know
works.
that friend you're referring to.
You do, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Cool. I just thought it just happened to be that you combined a little pleasure with business or something.
No, but that's what I tell the tax people.
Nice.
Did I say that out loud?
Well, you're just joking. So.
I am.
The uncle
absolutely.
named Sam will get the story. But
Just kidding.
I want to kind of get into just kind of start off with the whole term heart-fueled giant because I like that, and it's an interesting phrase. Tell us about that. What is that?
When I think of people, when I think of the people that I work with, when I think of my friends, when I think of my family, I think of them in terms of there is that bigness, that giant, that larger than life part of us that wants to come out, right? And it can be dangerous, so tempering it with heart is important, not just for my work, but also for my approach, for me. So Heart Fueled Giants is it's a call for myself, as well as a reminder, a call for others who might be attracted to that combination, that desire to be big, that desire to come out of their shell, and to walk a larger path in some way.
That's really, really, really cool. What is the context under which people usually find out about that?
They're going through a divorce.
Okay.
Or they're going through some sort of change in their life that they're not sure what's coming next, and they want to prepare. They don't want to waste any more time trying to figure out. They don't have 20 more years to figure it out, to find themselves.
Is this something that applies equally to males and females?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, the giant part, if I may, I had a reoccurring dream when I was 6 years old about...
Oh, we love dreams.
I know, aren't they amazing? I still haven't quite figured this out, but he haunts me still. And he was this incredible giant, beautiful, hairless, sort of silvery skin. And I got the impression that he was sentenced to stand near this cliff, tall cliff, with all these cars going, by his feet. And he was sentenced there, to hold that cliff up to protect those people. But whoever sentenced him took his strength. So every moment was an agony for him to do the job of protecting those beneath, kind of like, what's his name? The one who had the Prometheus. Was it Prometheus?
Yeah, who stole the fire from
heaven. Who stole the fire, that's right, and had
humankind.
his liver taken out every single day, and so on.
As a punishment.
Right, as a punishment. Kind of, it sort of has that feel to it.
Served it with onions.
That's right, fried in the pan.
Beans.
Yeah, fava beans. True. Brains. Clarified butter. Mm-hmm.
So there's something about that, releasing the giant within and trying not to go toward that too much. But that's my personal giant, and he's my giant. He's nobody else's giant. So I claim the giant.
Wow.
That's interesting.
I think that's really cool as a metaphor, because you're talking about something beyond yourself that you created, because it's actually not beyond yourself because you created it, right? You imagine this thing. But in a way, you're imagining something that's beyond the constraints of your situation, which is this giant that could have this massive impact,
right?
More than you could, but in reality, it's really you. So that's an interesting little loop to play, because it's not you, but it is you.
Yeah, it's difficult to live up to a giant,
Gives you something to shoot
but
for.
it gives me something to shoot for.
And you can't really miss it. It's
Hello?
as big
Can you
as a
pick me
barn,
up?
so you don't have to have good aim.
Right. That's right.
You run into it anyway.
One of the things that sometimes we talk about, and that we've pulled from other places, is that is to look at your dream like a painting and interpret it like a painting. If you painted a picture of your dream about the giant, what would it be called? I mean, would it be called Heart-Fueled Giant, or what do you think?
It could very well be called Heart-Fueled Giant because it was very important that to him that he do that he protect, that he actually fulfill what he was there for, and the suffering and the agony that he was experiencing was because he so wanted to be able to do that. But every moment took everything that he had. And so, when you imagine putting everything that you have, every single effort that you have, and to the point of exhaustion, to that tipping point on the other side where you can't continue any longer, but to have that be an eternity. That's the kind of,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a powerful image.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I had this dream over and over again. And so that's why it stuck with me. And my heart goes out to that giant, and why was he punished? And, how can I release him, in a sense?
It also means you have the potential to be a hero. And I hear that when you say Heart-Fueled Giant, I hear hero.
Well, exactly. And that's why I called him out in that name, because when I'm working with people who are, going through a divorce or thinking about it, I mean, they're typically at this place of agony, emotional agony. They don't know what to do. It's too big of a topic. They don't do it every day. This is their time to do this, and oh my gosh, how do I do this? So, and I really believe that how you approach your divorce sets you up for how you live your life after. I think of it like molten lava. If you are approaching and going through your divorce, you're in that molten state. Everything is rendered. Everything is up for grabs. Everything is just, you just don't know which end is up half the time. You're in that emotional liquid state, But as you go through it, you begin to take form and take shape. So, and by the end of it, you're sort of firm, right? And so I really do believe that how you go through it will set you up for what comes after. Will set your patterns, set new patterns of behavior and patterns of thinking and an approach to your life. So that's that heart-fueled aspect of that.
That makes
you
so
know.
much sense, because when you make the decision to commit to someone for life, aka our marriage, whether or not you actually did stay in that marriage or not, it's a big turning point in your life, and it's a big initiation. So if you then have to go through another type of an uncomfortable initiation called a divorce, it is a snapshot of you and the universe. Your agreement with the universe, your agreement with what is, has now changed, and you've got to address that in a real direct way. So it is a maybe a litmus test or something. It tells you a lot about what your philosophical position is with life.
And we have influence at that time. I mean, I refer to it as a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage, like going to prom is only more serious. Except maybe prom is just as serious to somebody going through that, but I don't know. But just as much of any rite of passage, probably more important, because so much changes in our life, and everything that is to come really hinges on the behaviors that we develop when we are rendered at our worst. So I do coach my clients that it is a rite of passage, and I want them to look at it that way.
Wow. I was just thinking as we were having this conversation that we kind of just jumped into the deep end of the pool.
But that's what we do.
Yeah, that's true. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And I have questions like, Petalyn, could you just briefly describe at what capacity do you work with these people? Like, for example, if I'm just a listener, I'm thinking, is she a therapist or a divorce lawyer?
Yeah, let's contextualize this a little bit.
Right.
And I don't
For
think
all
you're
of
a
our
divorce lawyer.
sakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a divorce lawyer, but I play one on TV. No.
Yeah, that's perfect.
No, I am a coach, and I work with a very special group of people that I can refer my clients to if they need a therapist. I have several therapists on my Rolodex to send them to, and attorneys and so on. But what I find, the reason, and it's interesting because the general public, first off, they're not typically aware that there is such a thing as a divorce coach. I happen to be a certified divorce coach, but and they're not aware that there are many other ways of approaching divorce to set them up for as smooth a process as it can possibly be. And they don't realize how much of it depends on them, on they themselves, how they approach it.
Yeah.
And that influences their negotiations. It influences how they heal through the process. It influences how they struggle. It influences everything. And so that's when they come to me because they want to do it right.
Yeah, and as an NLP guy and a constant punster, I can't help but be drawn to the sort of strange irony of the phrase divorce coach. It's a bit like an alcoholic counselor or something like that. It's like just putting a little humor in there, but it's kind of like you don't automatically think that you're going to need a divorce coach. And not that you're coaching people to get divorced.
No,
but,
and that is important.
Yeah.
I've had people actually decide not to get divorced. And my personal belief is that why go through a divorce? You have, if you don't have to, you have partnership with this person, you have history with this person. Why throw it away? But if you're going to, then let's do it with dignity. Yeah.
It's smart because you win either way. If you're an epic failure, they stay together.
Right.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
That's beautiful. That's great. Wow.
Well,
You can
it's
win
just
for losing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I believe in the struggle. It was grief that actually got me into the work that I do, because I had this thought. I lost somebody that was very important to me. Actually, can I just tell you, it was my cat.
Okay.
I love my cat very much. But
I've lost some beautiful ones too. So
yeah, and I've lost some people as well. But it's occurred to me by the time I lost this cat that we're all getting older. Grief isn't something that'll just come along once or twice. We're going to experience it more and more often, more frequently as we get older. Why haven't we learned to do this better yet? And that's when I became really interested in how to repurpose grief, in a sense.
Nice.
To go through it, to honor it, and so on, but to actually use it as fuel for something that we can build on to make us stronger, so that we can handle what is to come. So that's my crazy theory, and so that's kind of what got me into it. And then having gone through my own divorce about 3 years ago, I sort of applied. I always apply it. I apply those principles to every dip, every struggle situation. And we struggle all the time. Struggle isn't bad. It's just something we have to do. Human beings actually become stronger and become more fortified under struggle. We're built to struggle.
Right.
We're built to struggle successfully, ideally. Right. So I think as a culture, we tend to veer away from the idea of struggle. And I really want to sort of do my part to show it as a resource, which is one of the reasons I got involved with the whole Flow Genome Project and so on, because that's really what they're about, is understanding the principles of flow and struggle being part of that. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. Native cultures seem to have an easier time with the basics like grief. For whatever reason, they haven't lost touch with the rites of passage and the simplicity of day-to-day existence, but even more developed countries that have a strong kind of relatively unbroken tradition have that too. Like when we talk about in Italy and Greece, where women throw themselves on top of the coffins and weep, and scream and wail and all these things. And there are these traditions that are part of it. And I kind of like that there are these almost ritualistic places where you can concentrate really intense emotion and focus it in a real shaped way. That whatever is the shape of the circumstance. But I think a lot of what we suffer from today is a lack of being able to deal with what you're talking about, Petalyn, just the dealing directly with the issue. It's like even when it comes to death, people see passing away, passing on, going to a better place. They can't just say they died. It's uncomfortable to say he died. Why is that?
Reminds us of our own mortality, and we are very averse to that here in the U.S., right? I, in my opinion, which reminds me of New Orleans,
right?
Which
with
is
skulls on your shirt.
It occurred to me when I was there that these people are obsessed with death.
Yeah.
And I sort of meant it in a joking way, but you look around everywhere, and so in San Francisco we have these hearts. These big heart sculptures that you see every now and then, just on a corner or somewhere. They're huge, and I don't know if you have anything like that in Southern California, but in New Orleans, you have the equivalent of that, and they're coffins.
We have no heart here.
You have no heart.
Yeah,
that's right. It's Southern California.
And we shun death. So
yeah. Well, as I was saying, so we kind of jumped into the deep end of the pool. But that is also something that I like about our show, is that we don't really, we come in without necessarily knowing what we're going to say as we begin. So as the listener probably realizes, there's a randomness to the way our episodes start. And what we're looking for, because you mentioned the Flow Genome Project, we're looking for a flow of conversation. So sometimes we just might blurt something out and then kind of go with it. It might seem a little disconnected, like it's coming out in left field or something.
Certainly not planned.
Yeah, non sequiturs, things like that. But then we zero in on this zone, this kind of conversational zone that is a mutually held awareness that we're storming heaven together, we're exploring ideas, we're getting to know each other and feeling inspired to share. And I like that. It interests me. I'm very fascinated with how that works because we have no idea where this is going to really go. We just know that it's going to be focused around what you do and what's inside of you and hoping to bring that out. But that's the exciting thing about this show that we love is that we get to have this seemingly random exploration and see how it blossoms into something.
Yeah, and that's part of the struggle, right? There may be dead air here and there. We may mess up our words here and there. We may not quite know where we're going. And then something will release that tension, and then we'll be in flow.
Unleash the Kraken.
Unleash the Kraken.
Speaking of Greek mythology and Prometheus. So Flow Genome Project.
It's not mine. So I just want to make that clear. That is the brainchild of Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler, both of who wrote Stealing Fire.
Promethean reference there.
Promethean reference there, very much so, yeah. And yeah, so, their work takes Csikszentmihalyi's study of flow and creativity.
Nice job on the pronunciation, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's how you can't spell it, but you know how to pronounce it. That chick sent me high.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Good job.
So.
And he's the one who wrote the book Flow.
He wrote Flow and the Creativity of Flow or Creativity or something. He wrote many, many books. Quite an amazing dude. I would suggest anybody looking him up.
Yep.
And he came up with the graph where there's on one side, there's the skill level. And then on the y-axis, there's the challenge level. And between those two axes, there is the stream where you have a beautiful ratio between skill and challenge. And that is where you're not bored. And it's not a straight line either, because we're constantly moving between our capacity to do what we're doing and our challenge around it, right? So there is this stream. So for instance, however, if you are extremely skilled and the challenge is low, you're bored. So you won't continue to do what you're doing.
Right.
However, if the challenge is too high, is very high, and your skill level you can't approach, you really can't participate in whatever that challenge is, then you disengage. You just won't continue. So the idea is to stay in that middle stream between the two axes. Now, with what Jamie and Stephen came up with was building on that. That flow is actually a cycle. It's not a single state. So, when you're in that state of timelessness and you lose a sense of where you are, you lose a sense of yourself, we enter a stage of struggle. So we're really, we're in that beta brainwave, state. And we get to a place where we just can't do anything anymore. We're studying something. We're on a project. We're struggling to figure out something in the project, and we get to a place where we just simply need to take a break. So that's called the release phase. And what the release phase does is it takes us out of that beta and takes us into more of an alpha state. Alpha, theta. So you walk outside, you get into your body, you do some stretches, you do whatever, just to kind of release that tension of that beta phase, right? And you're in the release phase, and then once you release and you go back to it, you're in a different state. And that's when flow can come in. So, and then after the flow stage, you can't keep that up, that timelessness, selflessness, effortlessness. It takes tremendous energy, even though it's a creative flowing state. So you do that. And the trick, they say, is to stop when you're still in that high flow state. So you can actually go back to it, stop and recover. So, one of the things they teach is to struggle more gracefully and recover more deeply. Those are the two things that you want to really focus on in flow. You want to forget about flow.
So say that again. Struggle more gracefully. And what was the second part?
Recover more deeply.
Recover more deeply. So if I'm hearing what you're saying, once you get a sense of that sweet spot, that zone, you want to stop before it goes to completion.
Exactly.
So catch yourself doing this well. Don't spend it all. Don't blow your chops, right?
Right.
Do it and stop prior to when you feel like you've spent
Exactly.
all of it. And then refocus yourself on a recovering activity.
Yes.
And could that include things like, of course, like meditation?
It could.
Yoga.
Disengaging,
a walk in
sleeping.
nature, a bath maybe.
A bath, that's more of a release thing.
Okay.
But sleeping, completely disengaged, resting the brain.
So you're ideally taking your attention and taking it completely off that, not even thinking about
You're
the fact,
done.
because that's a tough thing, right, Satch? I mean, when we hit flow states in Tai Chi, martial arts and music and different things, it's easy to get caught up in the fact that you did it.
Yeah.
Your ego goes, wow, I did it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's why
and that's what you're saying not to do, right?
Yeah, and that makes sense, because that's like where our Tai Chi teacher, maybe we're practicing taking a particular type of push, and it's really difficult, and suddenly you do it right, and then he'll say, okay, that's enough.
Yeah, that's enough. Stop.
He says, because then you're going to try to memorize the movement you made, and it's not about a movement.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
And he'll just make you, just stop. Forget it. Don't do it anymore.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's a little counterintuitive for someone who hasn't become good at that, because you think, well, don't I want more of that?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the idea is it tells the brain, it leaves you on a high, so the body wants to go back to it, right? That's why you don't want to stop. So if it's something that you want to continue to practice, you don't want to practice until you fail again and leave yourself on a low,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? You understand
Good
that
point,
with
yeah.
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 It reminds me of when you're a kid and you're playing and you're having a great time, and your parents make you stop and come in. All you want to do is go back out and play again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very clever. That's a clever technique.
Yeah.
It is. There's so many parallels for that.
I was also going to say that as you were describing that, I sort of realized in myself, oh my God, that's practice rather than performance.
Yes.
You know, this idea that just earlier today, funny enough, I was thinking about this. We love to practice, and then a performance comes, and then it's all too often that people mess up during their performance. That's a common occurrence. And then we go back to practicing, and we love to practice. But why can't, when we're performing, we're just practicing getting better at performing?
Bingo.
Like, okay, I'm going to go perform right now, so I'm going to go practice performing.
Yeah.
Right. And so what you're describing about getting into a flow state and then ending it a little soon, sort of makes me feel like I want to go practice again. And it's always practice. It's always practice. That's kind of neat.
I read actually exactly what you're talking about. We're talking about about Olympians. They practice so that their performance is merely a practice. That's exactly what they were
that
saying.
makes sense.
That makes sense.
So that they don't choke. It's not a performance. It's not the day. It is just another practice.
Yeah.
So this is taking what we were discussing about confidence to another level, because in previous episodes we've talked about what one of my teachers, James Brown, pointed out to me, that whole idea of confidence not being, having anything to do with real, competence. Confidence and competence not related to one another. And that when you're practicing doing whatever your art is, or your performance, entertainment, magic, music, martial arts, anything like that, if you go out there with the idea that you're getting curious and you're playing, and you're even looking at the mistakes that you're doing as a learning, then you don't freak out when you make the mistake. You don't break your flow. You just keep going, because if you truly have that attitude that you're just going to explore, you don't care whether you do it right or not. You're just wanting to learn. So your curiosity trumps any feelings of insecurity, any feelings of having to do good or do well. And the curiosity maintained like that causes you to learn at an incredibly quick, rapid rate.
Yeah, I read the etymology of confidence comes down to self-trust. And to speaking to what you were saying, when we think of ourselves as both lab technician and guinea pig in our own laboratory, then it frees us to be completely curious. It frees us to be the experimenter and the experimentee. And so failure, so-called failure, is really an opportunity to learn something we didn't know before. And nothing's failure, it's information. Right? And that directly feeds our self-trust. Just being able to hold a space of, I'm going to see what happens. I have no idea what will happen, but let's just go for it. I mean, that takes tremendous self-trust, not in in your competence, but in your capacity to move through that experience.
It's faith, which reminds me when you said that, I studied some Latin in high school, and I have no idea if this is correct or not, but when I hear it, and when you mention that, it made me think fidelis, which means, like, as in semper fidelis,
Yes.
right? Always faithful. So fide, faith, and con being with, so with faith.
Exactly.
It makes sense. I have no idea if that's academically correct, but it's just my brain picking apart the word.
Right, yeah. And that is the Latin. I think confidere is the Greek.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm usually
They
right
say
about
tomato,
things like
one
that.
says tomato, so we're just, again, speaking two different languages.
Yes, of course. It's all Greek to me.
It's all Latin to me.
What are we standing around talking Chinese history for? Let's
Right?
get going.
I don't know. Yeah, really.
You're listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Up next, Carlos and Satch continue their conversation with Petalyn Albert. It turns out she's lived in a lot of places all over the world, which is really interesting. And they also get into her work as an NLP practitioner, specifically in working through and transforming fear. Stay tuned.
I saw you and Carlos admiring, or at least analyzing, the map that's on my living room wall.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
the
huge
world.
map.
The world
Yeah.
is on your wall.
So, I don't know, are there any special places on there for you?
Well, yes. I lived in Grenada, Trinidad, and Barbados. I was born in Vermont. Lived in South America and Venezuela as well. Lived in England, Ireland, and Scotland.
So you have lived in a heck of a lot of places.
It doesn't seem like that many, but yeah.
Wow.
The first 20 years of my life was spent abroad. I was born in Vermont. I was there for about 5 months. And then we traveled a bit throughout the States until I was 3, and then we left the U.S. and didn't come back until I was 20.
Wow, so this is with your parents.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, okay, wow. So did they have some particular reason why they went all over the world, or just they wanted to?
They intended, I'm convinced that their intent was to totally confuse and screw up my schooling.
Yeah.
And let me see the world instead. So no, my dad was in oil, and because of the nature of what he did, he could
Slippery
live
guy.
anywhere.
Yeah.
And so what's that?
Must have been a slippery guy.
Yeah. Okay, I got that one. I went back to it.
Said he was in oil.
That's right. He was an oily dude. No, he was actually a very nice man. So that's what we did. My mom was a designer, actually, a clothes designer, a very successful one, and she
Really?
could also do that wherever she wanted.
So
yeah.
you do you think you inherited some of her sense of style?
Because
You're very stylish yourself.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
inherited a lot of talent. I came from a very gifted, lots of talent on both sides of my family. Yeah,
Neat.
Mother and father. Yeah.
That's cool. And your mother is now a nun.
My
isn't
mom
she?
is now a
Catholic nun.
That's right. Yeah, God bless my mom. I love her. She's so amazing. You know, I so admire her. She always wanted to be a nun. When she left school, that was what she wanted to do. But she became disillusioned with the church. My mom happens to be an illegitimate child, and she learned that because of that, she would never be able to be a full nun. So that broke her heart, and she became very disappointed, and she sort of, and in her attitude, gave the finger to the church, and went looking for God in all the other places, Buddhism, Sufism, Hinduism, all of that. And so that's how I grew up. I grew up with a plethora of all of these different books and different religions around the house, and I really enjoyed that. But my mom, so she married 3 times, divorced 3 times, and I guess after the 3rd time, and actually the 3rd one, she married twice and divorced him twice. And I guess after that, she just said, I'm going back to the only dude that won't screw me up.
Married to the church.
Married to church.
The silent, distant type.
Right, yeah. No, but that was always what she wanted to do. And I joke, but I am so proud of her, and she is truly living the life that she should always have done. This is her walk. This is what she's always wanted to do with her life, to be a contemplative. Mm-hmm. And so she spends her life in prayer. And on my father's side, there are some very, very spiritual people as well, Buddhists and so on. I mean, they take that as their walk, that is their way of life. So, yeah, get that on both sides. Yeah.
So, what was it like growing up as a Petalyn?
As a
Petalyn,
God, there was no precedent. I think that was the hardest thing.
Huh.
Yeah, I used to pray at night that I would have an older brother. I hadn't quite figured out that probably wouldn't work out.
Did you have some like inspirations and heroes when you were younger?
Actually, yes. All my PE teachers, all my my coaches, I really I loved and admired. Sports was my thing. That was what I did in school.
Which sports?
Track and field.
Okay.
Yeah, in high school it was track and field, and then I went into the martial arts when I was older, and then bodybuilding after that.
Cool. What martial arts?
Shotokan.
Nice.
Yeah, but
how long did you do that?
About 3 years, not very long, but it was at a pivotal time in my life. My parents were divorced. I looked up to my senseis, actually. Mm-hmm. They really provided a sense of continuation of the honor of the knights of the Round Table, which of course I grew up with British history, so I wanted to be a knight. I didn't want to be a damsel. I wanted to ride the horses and joust and stand for something honorable.
Brienne of Tarth.
Right,
yeah, that's
exactly.
what I was just thinking.
Yeah. So my senseis provided that as well. That through the martial arts, that sense of honor, that sense of the empty-handed way. Protecting, not looking for a fight, fighting as a very last resort, but sort of, walking quietly and carrying a big stick, as it were,
Nice.
I really enjoyed that. And of course, I grew up in the era of Kung Fu, the TV series.
David Carradine,
Our favorite too.
Yeah. I actually, I don't know if I should say that. I actually, I wanted, in the beginning how he
you want to get the dragon and the tiger tattoos on your forearms.
I didn't want that, but I was intrigued by being able to handle pain.
Yeah.
Right. And so I tried that. I actually branded myself. You can still see it. It's like a T, which is it's something in I Ching, which I looked up. Can you still see it? Yeah, you can just barely see it anymore. But it was my test to see if I could translate the pain into something else, coolness, and I was able to sort of achieve that. I've never repeated the experiment since, but yeah.
That reminds me of the scene in Beverly Hills Ninja, where Chris Farley's character tries to burn his hands, and he picks up, but then he ends up. It hurts, so he spills the hot water on all the
other students,
all the other ninjas that were there.
Oh my gosh! That's good
stuff.
But you do things to test yourself when you're a kid, and you're trying to find the boundaries and figure out who you are and what's important, and if you can control your mind.
So the NLP advantage. Let's talk about that, because I've seen Facebook posts
Yeah.
and things like that. So you had your heart fueled giants, and
Yeah.
and I've started to see this, the NLP advantage, and I've seen some memes and things that you posted.
Yeah.
Tell me how that kind of came about, and what's that for you?
So I've always been fascinated by human beings, by human behavior, and trying to understand them and what makes them tick. And I'm always looking for ways that we can hack ourselves. And so when I studied with Matt Browning at NLP, I had been wanting to do that for a long time. And when I went through my training, my certification as a coach, they definitely, of course, use a lot of NLP techniques, but they didn't call it that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's kind of sort of soaked into a lot of different disciplines that are
Well, it is.
out there.
And it's
kind of
very
integrated
prevalent.
itself or migrated into those things. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and it's everywhere, right? I mean, when you talk about flow and how to really leverage the different stages and so on, or divorce and how to move through it consciously. We talk about anything really. I mean, if you, it's weird saying NLP. It's like NLP is in all of these things,
Right.
but many of these disciplines don't call it NLP, but to me, it's just about understanding behavior and how to be in the driver's seat of that.
Right.
Yeah. So the NLP advantage came about because I don't just 50% of my clients are divorcing clients or some stage of their divorce, and the other 50% are women who are in leadership positions or who are either changing their jobs, wanting to go from corporate to their own business, or vice versa, or they're just having performance issues and they're finding that they're not able to take care of that on their own. And they get to the point, where they've already made up their mind they're going to hire you, and they're smart. And so that's why people who are really, really smart, I put myself in that lump, but we think we can do it on our own, or we should be able to do it on our own. And we struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle. And then finally, i.e. the release phase, we go, to heck with it. I'm going to do something else. I'll find someone to help me with this. And that's when things start to move in the right direction. So I developed the NLP advantage to sort of help take care of those people, because not everyone comes to you. Not everyone is going through a divorce.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do the same thing, whether they're going through a divorce or they're going through performance issues.
Sure.
It's the same sort of training.
What are the main ideas or the main emotions that you consistently see that you find need to be worked on with people that are going through divorces?
Confusion and prioritizing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. When you're going through something like that, you're sort of taking the whole elephant at once and going, you don't know where to start. And you do that on an emotional level as well as a logistical level. What do I do first? I don't know what to do first. Where am I going? What can I expect? So the first thing I try to do with them is to get them to focus on what's important to them. What are they afraid of? And so we start there, bringing them back into themselves, back away from the world out there, that scary world. How am I going to live? How am I going to survive? What's going to happen with the kids? How can I have a real conversation with my spouse? We don't communicate well, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of fear. That's probably the primary emotion that describes everything.
Yeah, it's funny because we often talk about fear being the opposite of love. And wouldn't that make sense that people fell in love, they got together, and then things are ending, and what do they experience? Fear, the opposite of love. And
Yeah,
confusion.
and it's the classic, of the unknown, something we're not accustomed to, right? I mean, we've been doing something a certain way for a period of time, and then all of a sudden that's about to change, and we don't prepare for what that looks like. You know, I mean, when we're little and we think about being 20, we're sort of prepared. When I'm 20, I can go 21, I can go drinking, I can hang out with my friends, I can do this, I can do that, right? But we don't really prepare for beyond getting married, you know, or being with the one person that we think we're going to be with for indefinitely. Yeah. So yeah, and we don't want to think about that. Again, we don't want to think about death.
Sure.
You know?
For somebody who maybe isn't familiar with NLP work, or somebody who would never find a coach, who doesn't know anything about this, for that person, what do they need to know in terms of the types of techniques or approaches they would expect to go through with somebody who's working through fear with them, or helping them work through fear?
Well, I don't work with everybody. And so I would work with somebody who was really wanting to address that so that they can move through their process sanely and on purpose and come out having saved their sanity and come out somewhat emotionally ahead of the game, prepared for what's next. So with the people that I do work with, I would get them into their body first off. We can't think. One of the things that gets hijacked when we're in fear is that we stop being able to think. Our prefrontal cortex kind of shuts down, right?
Amygdala hijack.
Exactly. So, and so one of the ways that we deal with that is that we try to get them back into their body. I have different techniques and different ways of doing that. Get them back into their heart, and get them in touch with what they're feeling, even if it is just fear. But they're doing it in company. They're doing it with someone they can express what they're feeling, and work through those things safely. In order to get to the other side, in order to start to piece together what is it that they want out of this. If they're going to go through it, what's going to make it worth going through on the other side. And so I basically really do pre-frame a lot of that. This is a rite of passage, as we mentioned before. What's going to make this worth going through for you, just for you? What do you want to develop in yourself as you go through this? And teaching them how to not abandon themselves, not to self-abandon, not to abandon their bodies. That's really, really important.
Oh, I bet that's huge. Yeah.
It is huge, and it's really not very esoteric. It's very real.
Yeah.
If we're going to make a decision, any decision, we need to make it in the present. We need to make it from a place of, as you say, confidere, that fidelis, that place of self-trust. What do you know? You know. What do you know about yourself? Because our decisions directly affect our experience. Our experience directly affects our quality of life. So being able to be in a place and develop an awareness of what it takes to make a decision, to be in a place of decision making, is the skill that I want them to develop, and to not abandon themselves in the meantime. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. When somebody abandons themselves, what does that look like?
Well, they tend to be outwardly focused. They tend to worry about what other people are going to think of them. What are my friends going to think? What's my family going to think? They exhibit certain physical traits, coldness in the hands. They tend to shake sometimes. There's just different ways that you can abandon yourself. And I believe that when we experience or we're in fear of being abandoned, it's because we have a practice of abandoning ourselves. So one of the things that I do with them consistently is to help them, again, like I say, just get back into your body, experience what it's like. It's okay. It's not scary. The body needs you,
Does it also show up as, sleeping too much or too little, overeating, not eating
Yes.
at all, alcohol,
Yeah,
cigarettes,
escaping, yeah.
Escapism,
Yeah,
that kind of thing?
absolutely.
Because when you say that, I imagine like abandoning the self-care.
Yeah, and self-care means different things to different people.
Yeah.
And it really does go beyond and more deep than, giving yourself a bath or getting a massage. It really is developing a relationship with yourself and primarily with your body as well. I say that our body is our first pet. It's the first animal that we are given charge of. And we are so rarely taught to take care of it in a loving way. It has its own intelligence. It has its own needs, its own drives. It has its own opinions. And we don't really know it very well. And we constantly abandon it. And so I find that when we're in fear, oftentimes it's our body that is suffering from a vacuum that we leave inside. When our body's in fear, we vacate it in a sense. And where does that leave you? Body is mind, mind is body, right? I don't believe in the body-mind connection. I think that is misleading. They're the same,
I love that idea of your body being your first pet. That is
Me
so
too.
cool. Yeah,
That's great.
It really already has got me thinking differently about myself. I love my dog who's right here in the living room with us. I love my cats, right? But how well do I love my own body? And I think I, over the years have learned to take better care of it, but that's a whole different way of doing it. Yeah,
it's a whole different way of thinking of it. You would never do anything that would put your pet in fear, if you could help it, right? Pain and suffering is not okay for your dog and your cat. You would do anything to protect them, your loved ones, your pet, something that's vulnerable, something that is strong, something that is beautiful. You would never do anything like that. So why would we do that to our physical entity? We are an animal. We're a creature. Yeah. So, and that is something that I do work with. I do coach my clients through, particularly if they love animals. And I typically don't work with anybody who doesn't love animals. So
that should be
that's
in your
qualifying.
That should be in your initial
Exactly.
paperwork.
Questions.
It's just a matter of the cats or dogs or horses or whatever. But yeah,
I'm very skeptical of animal haters. Very, very skeptical.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's neat. Yeah, I'm going to remember that my body's my first pet the next time I want to eat a piece of chocolate.
Exactly. No chocolate, no
remember.
avocado. What is it? For
Yeah,
birds and dogs.
That's
and
right.
No chocolate, no
Yeah,
avocado.
right. And for birds, no Teflon,
no grapes.
Teflon pans.
Right. That's right.
Can kill birds.
Right.
Yeah.
So I deserve better. Yeah.
You deserve better. Your baby deserves better. Yeah. What are some of the neat things that you do, both of you, to help your clients come out of fear?
Oh, wow.
Oh, number one, it's body scan, because it gives information about how they're processing what they're processing. So by encouraging or leading them in a body scan, I can find out immediately in the moment, first of all, how well constructed their sense of self is, and also any information, any data that comes up from the scan, that's useful, right? We know from NLP to play with submodalities and to play with the way they're feeling sensations in their body, that kind of thing. So by guiding them to looking inside and actually observing what's going on in their body from head to toe, it's a good starting point to begin a conversation. I find that that's helpful with people in fear, anxiety, anger, sadness, because it's very useful. And then what they tell me I can use and utilize in a strategy to start shifting things. Of course, I'll add language patterns and things like that into it. And then on top of it, what you mentioned, having sensory acuity, expanding my awareness to look at then what else am I picking up that they haven't described, like posture, breathing, skin coloration, micro expressions. I can also incorporate that into what they're telling me. So that's a good starting point for me. I mean, there's more, but I think that's a good like general thing that I do almost always when someone's going through an emotion and they're working on getting through it.
Having them scan puts them in touch with their body.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it gets them.
It redirects their attention too.
Yes, yes.
For me, I would suppose that I help clients or students, or I help them work through fear by mostly using a way of connecting with them in such a way that we can sort of merge, and I can sort of lead them towards a better place of fear. I sort of recognize that their fear is something that, at least in the moment, they feel is necessary. So I just honor that, and use excellent listening and excellent, principles of how to connect with another person. In occupational therapy, we call that therapeutic use of self. And so I use therapeutic use of self. I think that when people have fear, there's often an element of a feeling of lack of control. So I make it very clear to them that I've heard them. I try to get to the bottom of what it is that they're afraid of. And sometimes I'm more curious about the details of their fear than even they are. And they might say, "Oh, I'm kind of afraid of that." "Oh, okay. Tell me more about that." Then they tell me more. And I say, "Okay, so when you say fear," sort of similar to what Carlos is describing and what you do, like this idea of getting back to the body. So what is fear like for you? Where in your body do you feel afraid? "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, are your hands trembling? Are your hands clammy? Do you feel your heart beating? Where in your body do you manifest fear?" And it's sort of to get back to something you said earlier, when a person's fearful and the limbic system is running the show, they're not thinking with their prefrontal cortex. And so by asking them those kinds of questions, they naturally start to think more, and they start to use more reason. And then they really get to see that what they're afraid of matters to me. And that is often enough, just to know that, okay, if this guy's going to stick needles in me, I'm about to get acupuncture the first time, and he is saying all these things that help me feel like I'm in control, and I think just, trying to help them realize that they have more control. I think that's a lot of it, and just being overly heard. That's sort of what I do. Yeah.
I love that. It is interesting that that when we're in fear, we tend to be afraid to think about our fear. And so you being more interested in their fear than they are, it is a chance to sort of take a look at that in a safe space and perhaps have a conversation with their fear for the first time.
Yeah.
And to get to know it.
That's right. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
That's true. It's true. Yeah.
And also, it can imply or presuppose that it's possible to be curious about it, because after all, you're doing it. So it can remind them and give them the impression that, maybe I could be curious about it too.
Yeah.
And what would it be like if I were?
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back to the scientist and the lab rat, all at the same.
Yeah.
time.
Right. There you go. I think the first time I learned to face fear with wisdom, because there's the sort of cliche way of face your fears.
Yeah.
Whatever you're afraid of, face it. You know what I mean? And that may not always be good advice. There are times when that's the wrong thing to do, but I think it's more the idea that you may or may not face an external fear. I don't think that's the point. It really is facing the fear that is in you, not the fear that is outside of you. Like, I don't have to go face a bear in order to overcome my fear. I have to face my sensations of fear in order to overcome fear. And I think the first time I ever realized that was possible was doing Vipassana meditation.
Yeah.
Because you're spending so much time observing sensations as they arise on your body that you sort of go, wow, all these years, these sensations and all their little subtleties and all the different locations have been there, and I haven't paid attention. And so I think that was the first time I realized that you could do that. And then as soon as I realized that, I wanted to find out how my patients are experiencing fear. One time a bunch of us were in the car. Oliver was there. was Tina there? Tina might have been there. Yes, I think Tina was there, and you, Carlos, and we were driving, and it was on a long stretch of desert highway, and there were little dips. We get that little wee feeling in your tummy, we think, and then Carlos says, "Where do you feel that?" And he asked everybody in the car where we felt that, and everybody expressed the same feeling, but in kind of a different way. Like I feel it, in this part of my chest and stomach, and somebody else feels it in their shoulders and head, and we just found that to be very curious, that we all experience this thing differently, that we assume we all experience it the same way. Do you remember that, Carlos?
I do, and it's been a fascinating thing that I've been just so curious about for years. The sensation of falling, that movement, the roller coaster feeling. Years ago, I was at Great America, which is in Northern California, right by where you live, right? Petalyn. And I will just say that I had taken some psychotropic herbs, and they were having a profound effect on me at that moment. And I went up into this large structure that was going to drop at a free fall speed. I don't remember what it's called, but it's there at Great America. It's a drop
zone or something.
Yeah, and I went up there, and I'm not one of those guys who just, goes on tons and tons of roller coasters. So for me, it was a little bit scary, but I went up there thinking this is a great opportunity for me to practice letting go of fear. So I went up there basically tripping balls, that's the technical term for it. And I was about to drop, and I just literally kind of relaxed and centered my own balance in the axis, right, from the crown of my head all the way down through my body, down through between my feet, and I imagined that going all the way to the ground. And I decided that at the moment of greatest acceleration, I'm going to feel the feeling of falling. So I'm going to take that moment and I'm going to change my awareness so that I don't feel it. And so I did that. Right at that moment, I let go the most, like more than any other part of the experience. And I timed it perfectly so that when I was falling, I actually did not feel like I was falling. I didn't feel that sensation. It went away because I let go so completely. I let the feeling pass through me, and I didn't hold on to it. I just let it go. And I've since done that on roller coasters a few times, and it works. If you relax perfectly at the moment of greatest acceleration, the sensation that you would normally feel from resisting it vanishes, and for a brief moment you feel this vacuous kind of empty experience. It's pretty neat.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
What a great story.
And so my heart didn't skip a beat. I didn't breathe. I didn't scream. I didn't do anything. I felt totally relaxed, like I was falling asleep.
Yeah.
It really reminds me that of something that it's our resistance that causes us the greatest pain. Right? When we just give in to something, it provides a completely different experience. I remember when I first went skydiving the first time. I was, you could feel that, like you said, you feel fear and that falling, in your belly, but then being able to move that energy up into my heart. It just shifted the energy enough to where I wasn't in so much fear the first time, and I was able to just sort of appreciate the experience out of curiosity.
Yeah.
But and also it reminds me of have you ever read anything by Mark Divine? No. So he's a retired U.S. Navy SEAL, and he's written a few different books. And one of the things that he talks about is changing emotion. So that anger can, in the body, we are interpreting the emotion as anger. That heat, that strong feeling, right? Because of the story that we have around whatever is happening, we're interpreting it as anger. But that is a very similar feeling to determination. So we can actually shift when we start to think, okay, I'm feeling really, really angry about this. How does that feel? How does this feel in the body? Okay, I have the feeling. I know this, yes. And does it feel like determination at the same as well? Yes. And just shifting it from anger to determination almost frees you from the rivets of being in anger, being locked up, to determination, because determination has a forward movement. What am I determined about? Allows you to move forward.
Sure.
Same with fear and curiosity. You can shift fear into excitement, actually. fear and excitement can feel the same.
You can,
right?
yeah.
You know, so things like that. It's very, very cool, and I loved learning that from him. And I was talking to a new friend of mine actually, who is also a retired U.S. Navy SEAL. And he is doing a study along with a buddy of his who's a neuroscientist out of Stanford University. And they are going to be focusing just on fear. And with his background, I would think that would be just an incredible study. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what they come up with, but how to manipulate fear in a moment when you don't have time.
Right.
And they want to come up with they want to study techniques and so on that anybody can use.
Well, and the idea of transforming sensations is a big one. It's huge. The ability to do that is just a great boon. I stubbed my toe really badly the other day at the beach. I kicked a rock as I was on a hike with a friend, and it bruised not on the toe itself, but sort of in the metatarsal. Very painful. When I came home, I just started breathing my sexual energy into it, and it took away the pain. So I focused on pleasure, and I decided that if I focused on this pleasure for just a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds, and I really get in touch with that for a moment, and then bring my awareness to the area that was feeling the pain, I could sort of spread or project some of that feeling into that part of my distal limb, and it worked. It totally took away the pain for the time being. And it provided me great comfort just to do that, just for a few seconds, just 30 seconds of, channeling that sexual energy into my foot, made my foot feel better.
I'm going to have to try the sexual energy thing. Right now, I just use the breath. I find that if I'm experiencing pain in a part of my body, literally, if I just breathe into that part of the body, it's amazing. It will shift the pain, and the pain will 9 times out of 10 completely disappear.
Yep.
I'll get a tiny cramp in my back or something, and I'll just breathe into it because I can't, reach around and rub it or something.
Yeah.
But I'll try it without, stretching or something else, some other way of addressing it. I'll just breathe into it just to practice that.
Totally.
And it's amazing how it works. There's that word again, but it is amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It's almost like I found for me, breathing is like the Advil, and then the sexual energy things like the OxyContin. When I need a really strong dose of something.
Which one's more addictive?
Oh, I don't need to even wonder about that.
You mentioned breathing into pain. My wife has been just doing that for years, and that's usually her go-to move. Like over the years, she would say, "Oh, my calf hurts. Do you want me to do something for you?" She goes, "No, I'll just breathe into it." She would just say that for years. "Oh, my belly hurts, but it's okay. I'll just breathe into it." And she just would do that for different body parts.
Incredible.
She always did that over the years. You were talking about like transforming sensations, and I think I shared this on another episode, but I think it's sort of pertinent to this conversation. Was when my dad was dying, and I had learned from you, with NLP work, that sometimes you can notice that there may be movement or shape qualities to a sensation in your body. And when my dad was dying, I remember I walked in and I saw him in the hospital room, and I felt, some emotion and hurt. And I just, as I was hugging him, I noticed, wait a minute, what is the nature of this sensation that I feel? And it had a shape and it had a movement. And as I was hugging him, I thought, can I make it go the opposite direction? And it was amazing how the answer was yes, I can make it go the other direction. Well, can I change its shape? And that allowed me to have a little bit, I still experienced the emotion. I didn't lose anything. I actually gained something from the experience because it loosened the grip that those emotions had on me, and I could sort of relax a little bit more and have a little more flexibility with my ability to respond to the situation, and that was certainly helpful in serious times. So it was neat. It was helpful.
Yeah, that method and methods like that are so amazing to me still. It's like, why the hell does that work? It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so powerfully.
Yeah.
It's kung fu. It's internal kung fu.
Yeah, it is
It really
internal
is.
kung fu. You're
It
so
really
right.
is.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
you
that's
manipulate the elements and manipulate the emotions and manipulate your lab. You know,
Yeah.
your creatures inside, and it's just this zoo, and we
Yeah.
just get to to experiment and see how to do things.
Totally. It really is inner alchemy.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, it is. It is.
You know, Carlos, you and I both really admire Mario Martinez's
Yeah.
work, Dr. Mario Martinez.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing him mention that, if you feel a sensation, there has to be, some kind of biochemical reason for it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can change the nature of the sensation, then you are literally changing your biochemistry. You
Yeah.
have to, because there is a biochemical reason for that
Right.
sensation. So
Right.
it's pretty empowering to realize that you're creating chemical changes in yourself every time you do these things.
Yeah.
And that we are amazing chemists. Our body is an amazing, this pet is an amazing chemist, and we could maybe, play with that a little bit more. It's useful.
Well, Petalyn, this has been a fun conversation. Satch, really having a good time. This is-
Yeah,
I think we did it
it's
again.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this has been wonderful for me. Thank you so much, both of you. You two are both very inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much.
Yeah.
This whole conversation has been inspiring.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Petalyn, if our listeners would like to find out more about you, what you do, maybe even get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Certainly, they can go to either of my websites, heartfueled.com or the NLPadvantage.com. They can certainly reach me by email, which is Petalyn@heartfueled.com.
Okay, and do you have like a Facebook?
I do. I have Petalyn Albert is one Facebook page, and the other one is the NLP Advantage.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
Lovely having you here.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Very special thanks to our guest, Petalyn Albert. If you'd like to get in touch with Petalyn, her two websites are heartfueled.com and thenlpadvantage.com. And now make sure you put "the" in front of that. It's the NLP Advantage. This show is produced by Oliver Altine. That's me. Our theme music is composed by Oliver Altine, and that's me too. Make sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes, Android Market, Stitcher Radio. Find us on YouTube, like us on Facebook. If you're so inclined, please leave us a rating and a review. These things actually help. Anyway, thank you for listening, and have an authentic day.